I think a true, really good designer, and there are many facets to interior design, so I don't want to, again, put anyone down, but there is a role for everyone in design. So whether you think I'm not good enough because I can't draw, or I'm not good enough because I'm not good with colour, or I'm not good enough because I can't document, you know what? There is a role for you somewhere in this industry because it is so big, and you need to have the confidence to hang on to your superpower and use that superpower, and then find the things that you don't know and find people around you to help you learn those skills.
Welcome to the Design Dialogues, the podcast where we dive deep into the business of interior design. I'm Beth Beesky, the founder of More Time to Design and a designer with over 13 years of experience. I'm here to help you navigate the challenges of running a successful studio, whether you're a solo designer or leading a team. Each week, I chat with industry experts and share practical insights to help you streamline your processes, grow your business, and create a studio that thrives. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy our Design Dialogues. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Design Dialogues podcast. And this week we have a real treat because we're not joined by just one but two fantastic interior designers. So this week I am joined by Daryl Wark from Interiors by Daryl Wark and Sarah Jane from Greenwoods Home. Hello both of you, how are you?
Hello, thank you so much for having us on. We've been looking forward to this.
Now I met both of these beautiful humans at our live event in Brisbane back at the end of 2024. And we started chatting and I was almost like, let's pause and pick this up on the podcast because there were so many gems that I knew my audience would love to hear. So to start with, of course, I need to find out, what can you see out your window today? Daryl, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, I'm in the Fortitude Valley, which is sort of, I suppose Sydney would be King's Cross, maybe Melbourne, it could be Fitzroy or St Kilda, maybe. Yeah, so I get to see lots of really interesting things. There's nothing really happening other than peak hour traffic, but, you know, half-dressed people often.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. People taking drugs on the street that shouldn't. But today it's quite calm. There's no one screaming in the background.
Love it. And Sarah, how about you?
So from my studio, I'm actually right next door to a school, and their sports complex is actually what I look out on, but it's got trees between it. And often I can hear the girls laughing and carrying on at their swimming lessons. So it's actually a really nice background energy, especially when you work from home on your own and things like that. It's really good fun to have them there.
Oh, how beautiful. So I would love to hear a little bit about how you have both got started in the industry and your studios. So Sarah, let's start with you.
Okay, so I came really from a background, I've always worked in the creative industries, not as a designer, but more as sort of account service, project management. And it was, you know, I was working in London for the BBC. I worked in PR when I came out to Australia. I was working in graphic design and branding, and I was working for a printing company. And that sort of gave me a really good background to segue into, you know, what I've been doing for the last 13 years. And how it came about was I was working for a company for 14 years. They had the unfortunate situation with the floods in 2011. A lot of us lost our jobs. And I thought, do you know what? I don't really want to go and work for someone else after 14 years. But working with this particular company, it set me up to start my own business, really, because, you know, I learned so much about small business, how to write a quote, how to present to a client, how to run multiple projects, how to coordinate those projects. What have I not said? Present, dealing with clients, dealing with suppliers, which was key.
Yeah.
You know, and I say that to a lot of, you know, new people coming into the industry. So much of the work, the smallest part is design, and
so true.
80% is that project management and
so true.
And suppliers. And, you know, that gave me that sort of the sort of head start to start the business.
I'd say a step up.
A step up,
honestly.
probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I established Greenwoods Home. The name came from people say, why Greenwoods? Because your name's Sarah James, and it was from a photo I found at my grandma's of my grandpa standing outside his shop in Yorkshire, and weirdly back then he was selling homewares, and also it was the shop was doing working tools for gardens and painting and decorating and all of that. So it was in my blood. And I found that photo and I said to myself, I'm going to start my own Greenwoods one day.
Love it.
My version. And that's kind of where it started. And, the rest's history. And really my business is, purely residential and renovation. I think that's answered your question.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And I love oh my gosh, so many questions come from that. But I think you just tapped into so much of what I talk about all the time and what I talk to people about in the health check, and is designing is actually such a small part of owning a studio and running a successful studio. And so any kind of, additional skills that you can gather along the way that help with the business side of things is such a step up. It's just amazing.
That's very much what you do, what you're offering, which is this, I think, this new incredible platform that I would have begged for when I started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because, we wanted to talk about this too, and you might obviously as well, about how little when you come out, whether you've gone from a previous career that has skills into design, or whether you've gone from, whether you've studied at a TAFE or whether you've studied at university, you know nothing really. And I'm not being rude to anyone who's just starting.
No,
it's
so
an
green.
Absolute reality, and it's such a shock. I think I almost vomited into my mouth the first day I worked for an architectural firm in Canberra, a big firm, and I stepped in and I had no idea what I was doing. I could present because I was older. My God, it was like an uphill ride for about 2 years.
Yeah. I always think that design school, wherever it is and whatever form you study in, it kind of only really gets you to the front door.
Absolutely.
And then that on-the-job training is when you really learn how the house is put together and how it all comes together and all of the different parts. And that's almost just the design side of it. If you then want to go and do your own business and be a studio owner, that's a whole other ball game. And, if you're fortunate enough to work in a smaller studio where you might witness it or experience it kind of thing, that's great. But so many designers come out of being in a studio, especially if they've worked in a big studio where it's very separate, the business side to the design side. They can almost have no idea, and it is a little bit scary.
Yeah.
So, Daryl, tell me a little bit about your studio.
Okay, my student, where I started in hospitality. So this is a third career for me. So I originally started as a chef and a food stylist, always creative, but always wanted to do design right from when I was a kid, but just thought, I'm a guy and, I don't want to do it. And eventually I got over that in my 30s and decided to study part-time, and then it just all evolved from there. So from hospitality, that creative side, into design, which I absolutely loved. The minute I started studying it, I knew it was for me. I think you've got it in your blood. I think a true, really good designer, and there are many facets to interior design, so I don't want to, again, put anyone down, but there is a role for everyone in design. So whether you think I'm not good enough because I can't draw, or I'm not good enough because I'm not good with colour, or I'm not good enough because I can't document, you know what? There is a role for you somewhere in this industry, because it is so big. And you need to have the confidence to hang on to your superpower and use that superpower, and then find the things that you don't know and find people around you to help you learn those skills.
So true. So true. And I think so often we don't give ourselves enough credit for the stuff that we are really good at. And I think it's actually really And like, I suppose if we come back to the example of working in a big design firm, like if you work in a big design firm, you actually don't do it all. You do part of it.
That's right.
Like, there's a team that does the concept. There's a team that does the documentation. There's a team that does the FF&E. Like it's very separate. So then when you move into having your own studio, to think that you are going to do it all and you're going to do it well is actually kind of a disservice to really how you should set up your business. Like really, and I know this might sound a bit funny, but I always think that from the very first day you open the studio door, you should know the first thing you're going to outsource, and it's the thing you hate doing. So for me, it's documentation. Can't stand it. I'm not very good at it because I don't give it the time, and I find it frustrating, and I can procrastinate like nothing else when it comes to documenting. Something that should take 20 minutes and I'll make it last a month. I just cannot stand it. But I think,
Beth, sorry to interrupt, with trusting someone to do that for you, that's the struggle I found when I started.
But I think that's really interesting because I think that is a skill or a mindset that you have to navigate as a business owner. Yeah. If you don't trust other people and you can't, and the trust works both ways. So it's kind of like you can't say, I need you to document this, but not have any systems and processes around how you want that documented.
Absolutely.
So you have to put the scaffolding in place so that the person who you are, so it's actually like you've got scaffolding, but then the trust is only actually a little bit of the process because you've got such strong systems and processes in place that it's kind of almost impossible for it to go wrong.
Yeah.
But that's, that is a real mindset thing that studio owners need to kind of work on.
And I think, going back to small studios, leaving a big studio to start your own business, you're saying everything that you need to hear, because all those skills, you don't realize you don't have them until
you have to use
props
them.
its head up and smacks you in the face.
And there's no accounts department to call and go, or IT department, or, the lawyer, like the legals, like when there's no other department to call and it's just you.
Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, I need to get a terms and conditions put together. I can't send a quote out because I don't have terms and conditions or terms of agreement. So like, okay, need a lawyer now. And that's all the stuff that, these young people, or, not necessarily young, they just don't understand all those facets that they have to understand before they start their own business.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very true. One thing that I found very interesting, and I think it's a really common thing in our industry, is that so many people come to interior design as a second or third career.
Yeah.
For, many reasons. It's like, get a sensible job, or you won't be able to make an income out of it, or all of those kind of things. And so often what happens is you come to it as a second or third career, and it's actually really hard to get. And I think this is something that the industry needs to get an awful lot better at. But it's actually very hard to get like a junior role where you learn all that stuff as a more mature age person. And so therefore, so often people who are coming to it as a second or third career, they kind of go down the path of, well, I'll just start working for myself because I can't get a job anywhere else.
Right.
Mm.
I think so often, though, we discredit the skills that we pick up along the way from our completely unrelated, career. So this is a bit of a question, like off notice, but what are some of those skills that you picked up from, like, Daryl, from working in the food industry and food styling and as a chef, and, Sarah, from your experience as well, what are some of those kind of skills that you've brought across from your previous careers?
For me, I suppose it was that innate sense of design and food.
Yeah.
You only have to watch television shows now and you go into good restaurants. It's all about design. Everything that's placed on the plate, if it's just thrown on, it's not going to be enticing. And then, I thought I actually went from food into theming for big balls and events. And I would work with like the florists, and I'd go, oh, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm the chef. And they're like, what? You're the chef? And you're involved in the theming. And I'm like, well, I really like it.
Yep.
And I suppose each of my career, it splintered off slowly, where I worked in a big mansion house in Melbourne that was a restaurant and a function centre, and it was just terrible when I was taken over as the chef. And I said, you really need to get your shit together here. This place looks like a dump. You're not going to attract high-end clients from, Toorak and Brighton and Kew. You need to revise it. And they're like, well, what do we do? And then I just suddenly went into that area. And I think when you're creative, it's there and it's always there. And you bring those skills that you've learnt across. Same with retail. You take those, and I think I'm an introvert. So I found, and I think that's a big thing with a lot of designers, we're very creative and we don't have every skill. And I think taking on your own business is so, so difficult if you are an introvert, because fronting a client is one of the most terrifying things, because it's like you're going for a job interview.
It is.
Every day. And you really have to know how to read people. You have to be a marriage guidance counsellor. You have to be a psychic. You have to be able to
like a language interpreter,
I like what the hell is that? I like modern what? So I think you pick up your strong skills from your previous career. I think going into design as a second or third career is wonderful, because you're taking something that you've learned into this new career, and it saves you years. It really does. Like when I got that job at MGT in Canberra, the reason I got the job was not because I had great skills, because I was a junior. I could present. They could throw me in a boardroom and I could present what the senior designer had done. And I was older. I was in my 30s then. And I could talk to people. I could relate to people. I could make them feel comfortable. That was my superpower. And then I learned all the other skills as I went along.
Yeah. I think one thing that you just we're going all over the place here.
Sorry.
But, which I love. But one of the things that you just said, which I think I talk to designers about a little bit. So it's how knowing who you are as a designer and a person, when it comes to owning your own business and how you set how you run the show in a way. So I think it's really interesting. You touched on the point of being an introvert and how draining it can be presenting to clients all the time. Yeah. And I find it draining as well. I find I need to only schedule one or two. I really can only do a couple of client presentations a week. Otherwise, I'm just all over the shop and it's just too much for me and I need to go and sit in a dark corner for a while. Yeah, but is that something that you have both kind of navigated or learned about yourself as you've gone through? And how do you schedule out your projects and your work so that you don't get to the point where you have this massive week with 4 presentations and you get to the end of the week and you just in the corner kind of rocking?
Sarah, what would you say about
Right over to me, Daryl. Sometimes I get to the end of the week and go, how the hell did I get there? Because I know the stuff in my diary at the start of the week, which can change in a second with a phone call. Because I do a lot of renovation work and, I'm thinking, I'll have a nice quiet morning. I might go and have a coffee and catch up with a couple of suppliers. And the builder rings me at 7 and says, Sarah, we need you on site. We've got amazing documentation here, but we need to make a decision. The client has sort of gone left of field with something. And so that throws my day out completely. But at the same time, I love it. I love that sort of energy of going, okay, I'm going out to the building site. I'm going to make a quick decision because I've got that experience. And sort of going back to your question, what skills have you brought with you?
That's your superpower.
That's my superpower is, I've renovated 3 houses and done a lot of that hands-on. I've met some amazing trades in the last 13 years. And to be able to call on them. And if that other builder on a job has said, Sarah, what do we do here? And I go, shit, I'm not sure. I'll ring my sort of, my stable and say, hey, what
do I do?
What would you do?
What can we do? What would you do in this situation? But I mean, that's not to say we don't know what we're talking about, but that's my superpower is knowing who to talk to. And I've gone right off track with your question.
Yeah, and I forgot my question. I'm so sorry.
Of how I get from A to B in my week. What was the question, Beth?
I was just asking about how, as an introvert, I think something we don't talk enough about is actually knowing who you are as a person and how you should run your studio. So like as an introvert, like for me, I know that I can't schedule more than a couple of client meetings in a week
Right.
because otherwise I'm just like, it's all too much. And it's just like, I'm not a happy camper. But to do that, I need to have really good systems and processes and have all my projects scheduled out so that I don't come to that. And like occasionally it all falls apart, but like I really try and manage my schedule so that I do have all my client meetings scheduled out. Is there something that you kind of do in your studio that you do because you know it works best for you personally and your personality?
Look, I think for me, I had an assistant. I've got an assistant now, and I had an assistant before that. She was an A-type personality and very outgoing. So she would want my calendar full. She'd be booking people in, to go out to have introduction meetings, and I'd be doing presentations, on the same day. And I'd say, I just can't creatively think. I need to. Sometimes when you come back from a client presentation or just a meeting with the client and listening to the client, truly listening to the client, you come home and or to the office, you just want to lay on the carpet and have a sleep. And so I had to teach her that. She said, I just don't understand it. I said, I'm not an accountant. I can't just keep going. You have to be kind to me for me to work properly. So now I actually have realized in time that what I have to do for myself, even if I've got a couple of presentation meetings, I usually don't try and do more than 2 a week if I can help it, because I always run out of time. You know how you go down a rabbit hole and you're searching for stuff and you go, oh my God, I've only got 4 hours and I've got to present. And you just think, I'm not going to get finished. You always get finished. You
Always.
just the 11th hour you get finished. But you think, and you put yourself under so much stress. So now, and even sometimes if I'm 2 days out before a meeting and I'm just not feeling great, I'm not there not emotionally. I'm just not there. I'm tired, and I'm not going to give that meeting my best, and I'm not going to actually design my best. I actually cancel a meeting. I'll ring them up and I'll say, look, something's come up. I need to postpone this for usually 2 days. And then I give them an option of 2 days or sometimes 5. And you know what? 90% of the time they pick 5 days. That gives me some time to breathe, come back to myself. And if I'm stressing out at all those things that I haven't completed for that meeting, it's not going to kill me because I'm going to catch up. So I suppose that's how I manage my week. And I've got an assistant. She's fantastic. I call her my gatekeeper. So when I can't talk to anyone, or I don't want to be bugged by reps or bugged by people with stupid questions, Barbara handles it. And I love her for that. She stops my brain from exploding.
Yeah. I love that idea of a gatekeeper. And like, if someone doesn't have, like, I think the email version of a assistant is putting your out of office on. Like, and it doesn't need to be I'm on holidays. It might just be that I'm on a site meeting for the next 4 hours. It's going to take me a while to get back to emails or something like that. Like, they don't need to know exactly where you are, but it's just that clear communication to anyone who's contacting you. But it gives you the space to breathe and get your head back into the right space.
I think a really big thing that I've realized as a designer over time, and again, because you're in retail and hospitality is my background, it was about service. So I was there for the client. I'm a people pleaser. I think most designers are. So I flogged myself, and people would, friends would say to you, oh, you never answer your phone. And I'd go, well, I do, but I'm busy. And you have to say to yourself, you know what? I'm not answering my phone and I won't answer my phone. I will come back to you. I'll come back to you that day unless it is urgent and your house is burning down or there's water pouring out of your toilet. Call a plumber, don't call a designer.
Exactly.
There will always be time to call that person back. And I think you have to be very strong and a little bit arrogant and strict and don't listen to the crap that other people try and put on you. And you have to say, well, no, I don't get back to someone immediately because I'm working on someone's project that they're paying me for, and I don't just pick up the phone. I pick the phone up and speak to you when I've allocated time for you, or I get back to you after I finish what I'm doing. And it sounds very arrogant, but my God, my life has changed since I've done that. Changed.
And I think that's really interesting. I think as a studio owner, being really protective of your time is important. And I do think you're right. I think as interior designers, there is an element of us being people pleasers because we're generally working on people's homes. They're spending a lot of money. There's a lot of emotion attached to the work that we do, especially if we're doing residential design. Like it's a really emotional, there's a lot of baggage. As you said, like half the time you're marriage counselor and,
Mediator.
Absolutely.
language decoder and like sometimes, child minder all at the same time. So I think being protective of your time, it's not arrogant. It's actually very clever. So I think that's really important.
My biggest bad habit was answering text after hours, which I've stopped.
Never do that
now. And I actually train my clients at the beginning and say, emails are for the important stuff that we're documenting. We're making sure we've got the right information. Text is for, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Can you change the meeting? Whatever it is, but I'm not having conversations when you come home from work and you've had a chance to talk to your husband about the tile color or whatever else it is. Let's do that tomorrow. Let's make a meeting. And I also try and sit with clients rather than doing 1,000 emails to try and get an answer. I think that's my one of my things I've learned is don't try and do it all over email. Make a time, sit down with them, have your questions, get the answers, document it when you come back so we're all on the same page. But don't have the conversation in an email because it just goes on. And then you're spending like 4 hours like dissecting an email that could take half an hour in a meeting.
Yeah.
So that's been one of my...
I do a bit of that and I find it hard because I think I've come from about that first job at a big architectural firm. Everything is documented. Nothing leaves the office unless.
No.
And so I think your skill, Sarah, is much better because I spend far too much time on documenting things to save my ass in case anything goes wrong, because often it does, and it's not your fault. But you can, if a builder throws you under the train, you go, well, I'm sorry, and I'll go. I've got a memory like an elephant. On the 16th of March, I sent an email and it said this.
I know.
And you can bring it up. But Sarah's thing where you write it down and then you send an email to say this is what we discussed far faster. I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, take that. No. But I think that's come from like previous career experience is working in advertising. We'd have client meetings and there was lots of decisions made and our job was to go back to the studio and send a contact report. And out of that came the actions from, whether it was the builder or the client or the designer. And that becomes your checklist as well.
Yeah.
So that's been, my superpower.
And it's very easy to do these days, especially if like if you have the meeting, like it's an online meeting, to have so many of the screen recordings now, they have little AI things that give you a summary of the meeting and all of that kind of stuff. So generating those summaries is so much easier than they used to be. And but I do think having that communication log and change log and documenting all of that stuff is so important. You just have to find the right way to do it for you that is not too time consuming, but it is very, very important. One of the things that I wanted to talk to both of you about, because I think it's something that so many designers dream about. They'll just have a little pretty store, and we'll sell pretty homewares, and it'll just be pretty and so much fun, and we'll have a little dog out the front. Both of you have dabbled and worked with bricks and mortar retail, and Sarah, for you, like online retail. Tell us a little bit about the lessons you've learned from that little journey that you've both been on. Daryl, I'll start with you because I know you've had kind of multiple stores and...
Wow. Well, it goes back to that. As soon as I finished studying, I got a job and I moved to Brisbane and I was head of VM for the state. Never done that before in my life, but again, as a creative, you just adapt and you do it. I put design on hold because I actually, after working for that last company, sitting doing tile layout in skyscrapers for Hong Kong apartments, I couldn't do it. I was so depressed, really thought I can't do this anymore. This is not what I just had to find my place, and that wasn't my place. So got another job. And then I I had some time to myself after I'd finished at Country Road, and I was working. I had saved some money, and I thought, you know what? I've always wanted. I'm a collector at heart, so I always collect things. And I think as a designer, you're just an innate collector because you have a million ideas in your head. You've got a million rooms, a million schemes that you could do, and you just have them there. So collecting was my hobby, and then I thought I'm going to open a store. And I'm going to be an interior designer and I'm going to be a garden designer. So I tried to do all three. So I opened a small boutique garden centre under a building in Brisbane, and we're importing Indonesian and Dutch Indonesian antiques. As I travelled, I hunted, we brought them back into the country, and I was trying to start out as an interior designer. Absolute disaster. I had a fantastic friend in Melbourne who's a really known lighting designer, and he said, Daryl, you just need to pick one. And I'm like, but why? And he was like, because you won't be able to do it. And he had his own business, so he knew what he was talking about. And I thought, oh, David, that's not right. So you know what? I truly believe, they say the 5,000 hours before you're an expert. You can't do 15,000 hours in multiple careers. You have to pick one. And even if you say, and for me, with the homeware store and the furniture store, that was the first one we started, it was like I really couldn't do design because there was no time. Retail was so all-encompassing, really difficult, and I would not recommend anyone to do it. I think we've gone through that time. There's very few small retailers left. You have to be so sure that you are so good at what you do. And I would advise you strongly, if that's your passion, to work for someone else first who's really good. Take all that knowledge, have a year to 2 years salary behind you, and then attempt it. And it's not going to be easy, and you can't do both. And I think a lot of people have this fantasy that they're going to have a store. So I would not do that. I would probably start out like working for somebody else, see whether I like it. Some people just hate retail. They go, oh my God, I can't stand people. They drive me insane. I can't. That woman was in here for 5 hours talking about the colour of her cushions, and I've got to help her with a sofa. No. And you just have to realise that that's what it is. And so I would recommend that you don't do that, that maybe you test it, and then maybe start slowly in design where you don't go out and get a shop front, even though with some people that gives them, you've got to have all this money behind you to be able to survive for 2 years without really making any money other than covering all your costs. If you can do that, great. And if you can throw money at it, you probably will be successful, but it's a lie. You're lying to yourself. It's just not going to work. Even if you're incredibly talented, but it's all about talent, money, time. All of that, you've got those three things together at the same time, and focus, you can achieve great things. But if you're trying to do too many, like I did, you're never going to go. Everything takes 3 times, 4 times longer than you want it to. And that's what happened with me. Eventually, I after probably 10 years of retail and touching on design, I did little bits of design in the background. It was time to give the retail up. And then we've gravitated now to a small studio, which is I call it my face, my little jewel box that has some collected beautiful things on shelves that I hardly ever sell, that I probably take into jobs and use them for styling. But that is my pretty place where I come and bring my clients. But that's definitely not something I would do as a start-out designer, because it could be a catastrophe. It could ruin you. So that's where homeware come from me. My little hint on that.
That is a hard no. I think it's so interesting because I think this for me falls into the like the category of, do you need an office? And Daryl, you've just touched on that. But I think so often people are like, they've been going along for a couple of years, they're starting to get some good projects, and they're like, great, now the next step is to get an office. And I'm always like, why? Like,
all that.
Why? Like, do you really challenge that thought and go, why do you need an office? Is it because you've got this big team, but do you actually all need to be in the same place? Can you do there's so many other options where you can meet and all this kind of stuff. So I think so often we have these kind of stories we tell ourselves about what success looks like and what a big design firm looks like. And all that kind of stuff. And I think so often I say to designers so often when, especially like in the health check, and they're like, this is my next step. And I'm like, why? What is your true motivation behind wanting the shop or wanting the office with the name on the door? Like what is the motivation there?
And just to give people an indication of what that costs, I've got a tiny little showroom with really good street frontage, and Barbara has her desk in the entry. I've got my office here and a little presentation table and some furniture. That's costing me $25,000 a year, and then all the running costs. And it cost me about $15,000 to set it up, like just to make it look pretty. So, if you say to yourself, you know what, I'm doing so well that I'm willing to throw $50,000 a year. I'm going to give that away so that I can pat my ego because I've got a shop, and a studio with my name on the window. Absolutely do it. If you want to grow your business and you've got a plan about, I'm going to get my face out there, I'm going to promote myself through this shop, I'm going to do it for a certain amount of time, take on a short lease, maybe a year, 2 years, see how you go, and then if it doesn't work, back out. The worst thing you can do is hang on, and all this money that you're earning and you're slogging yourself and working hours to pay for something that actually you don't even need.
Exactly. And I kind of often I go, well, that 50,000, that could be a day off a week.
Absolutely.
Why don't you need to work 4 days a week if you don't need to cover the costs?
I always relate it to a holiday. That's an overseas holiday for 3 months or 6 months.
Exactly. So I think it is a really interesting thing kind of that I think so often we don't really talk about in the business, because I think it is so much harder than what people think it's going to be. It takes so much longer. It takes so much more money. It's just hard.
Very hard.
Sarah, tell me about your experience, because you have kind of the other, I think, dream that a lot of designers think, oh, I'll just have a little e-store on the side.
I did. I had Greenwoods Home online because I wasn't quite ready to sort of become the interior designer that deep down I knew I should be. So I thought, I'll just do a little homeware store online. That's easy. I'll go to the trade fairs, I'll go and buy a few things, and I'll take photos and sell them online. How hard could that be? Well, I had a few surprises. When I went to the trade fairs, that was 13 years ago, and they said, oh, no, we don't sell to online shops. We only sell to bricks and mortar. And I said, no, I'm buying the product and I'm going to photograph it. I'm going to sell it online. I'm not doing drop ship. It's a very unique store. I actually, once I sort of established the online shop, I did little pop-up shops in people's homes to get the brand out there, and took all my stock into these people's homes. It wasn't like selling Tupperware or something where you have to order it. I set up a shop in people's sitting room.
You were the original pop-up.
I was the original pop-up. It was. And people hadn't really heard of pop-up stores. And, friends would...
Oh, I love these stories. I love these stories when you look back and you go, what was I thinking?
What was I thinking? And the other thing that I didn't realise was, so my poor...
You have to put it back in the car.
I had to put it all back in the car because I didn't sell it on the night. I probably sold a little bit. It was
a candle.
Yeah, a candle. Thanks so much. It was the photography, and it was all the de-patching and making the shots look nice and doing lifestyle shots. And it was huge. Just to sell a towel or a candle or a vase. And I thought, what am I doing? And there's no profit in this whatsoever. No. And so the last pop-up I did was actually on James Street in the Valley. And a friend of mine came in and she said, oh, this is so lovely. Da, 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 da. And she said, oh, I heard you helped out a friend of ours on their renovation, and I've got a renovation I need help with. Can you do that? And I went, yes, I can, and I'm going to charge you. And that's kind of where it kind of started, because I went, shit, I'm going to charge this person money right now to do their design work. And that's sort of where it all just kept going and going and going. Yeah. And I started out charging $500. And maybe you should edit that out. I charge a lot more now. But it was from that online store, and that online store is no longer. I didn't understand anything about e-commerce. Instagram really wasn't a thing back then.
Where you could sell from it.
Yeah, you could. I was sort of, ahead of my time.
You were.
I
yeah.
was.
Now might be a different story.
Yeah, it might be a different story.
Well, no, I reckon it's even harder now. Because now there's just so many people who think it's a good idea, and the saturation is out there. And I think one of the issues that we have now is that with stores like something like Kmart, like quite often you walk through Kmart and you're like, oh wow, that's actually quite nice. It's a complete dupe of something that is 100 times more expensive. But I think we just live in this culture of, I don't think people appreciate the cost of actually something that's been made by an artisan, and then the cost of...
I was specialising in is artisan projects. Sorry to interrupt you. I thought, I found a niche. Artisan, I'm going to support Australian creatives and sell their products. No chance.
No, it's really hard. And so I think the lesson that you both would say is that pick one thing and focus on it.
Absolutely.
If it's a retail store, pick that and don't try and do anything else.
Yeah.
If it's design, pick that.
Yeah.
Stick to that.
And give yourself a time frame. Don't be realistic.
Yeah.
Just say, if I haven't done this, and have a plan, if I haven't done this in a year to 2 years, stop.
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that, if something's not working, it's not working. And usually there's not going to be some miracle that comes in and like fixes it overnight and it's going to become a success. Like if you know that you've put in the hard work and you know that you've been consistent in your effort and you know that you've done everything you can, if it's not working, there's no shame in saying this is not working, I'm going to stop.
Yeah. It's like the light globe, isn't it, with Edison? You keep making it until you think, no. Okay.
Totally. And I think, I don't know who says it, I don't know if it's Mel Robbins or who it is, but someone always says, if you close a door, you're actually opening space for the right door to open. And I think that's really important. And I think, the same goes to when we're talking to clients or, you might be putting out fee proposals. And I think, you've both been in the industry long enough, you'll know this, like you'll put a fee proposal out there and you're like, oh, I really want to get this job. It ticks all the boxes. And then for some reason it doesn't happen. And usually the next week or the week after, another lead will come in and you go, actually, this is even better. And I'm so glad I didn't get that other job for this reason, kind of thing. So I think one door closing generally leads to a window opening.
And that's the biggest fear in this industry as a small design studio, the fear of not having the next job. And sometimes you make the mistake of taking that job. And I've done it right up until...
Take the wrong project.
2 weeks ago. Do I take that job? Oh, I really don't think that client's right for me. I'm going to get any work, and oh God, you have all these peaks and troughs, and I think you have to be true to yourself. And if that gut feeling tells you this is going to be catastrophic with this client, they're not made for you, and you're not made for them, walk away. You're better off to have mince on toast for a week than have to deal with the pain of a bad client.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing that, if you've done it a few times, you know this to be true. But if you're just starting out and you're like, oh, they're not right, but I'm going to take them anyway because I need that cash in the bank.
You have to sometimes, yeah.
Guaranteed, though, that client is going to end up costing you money in some way, in that they'll be so time consuming that, you spend so much more hours on it than you think you will, or they never want to pay for the work anyway, and so you end up discounting your fee. Those clients that have got red flags and, in fact, you just know they're the wrong client, they always end up costing you money. So,
trust your instincts.
Yeah. So tell me something that excites you about our industry at the moment, Sarah.
Well, for me, Brisbane it's great. Poor old Brisbane used to be the poor cousin, and it's really exciting to see some new brands coming from Sydney and Melbourne into Brisbane. We always had to travel to Melbourne, to the trade fairs, to look at furniture, because you couldn't say to a client, oh no, they'll be really comfy, because they even though you've sat in it and you've quality checked it, to have it here in Brisbane is so exciting. because it's like, yay, we can actually take them into that showroom. And, you know, some of those online brands, it used to be called Click On Furniture. It's now called Trit. They're in Brisbane. Yep. You can take clients in. They've got, you know, multiple brands in there. It's brilliant.
I do think
it's exciting.
It made us better salespeople because we didn't have that tool of the showrooms.
Yeah.
So we really had to work hard to get something over the line, because then you'd say, well, let's fly to Sydney, and they, oh no.
Yeah, good.
Sit in the sofa. So you had to be very good at selling yourself.
Convincing yourself.
But Sarah's right. It's starting to open up for Brisbane.
That's awesome. Daryl, what about you?
Oh, exciting. Look, I suppose for me it's the introduction of AI and where that can take a designer. And particularly, I think, for a sole trader or a small studio where you can't do everything. You think you can and you just don't have time. And technology is moving so fast, and you have to be over your social media now. You just have to. So I think using that as a tool to back you up every day,
rather than being fearful of it.
That's right. Don't be fearful of it. And I think if you're young, you're not.
No.
You just integrate it into your system. But it is such a great thing. I can just see amazing things coming in the future where it'll never replace a designer.
No.
It just can't. You know, we're the ones who are creative. It copies us. So we're always going to be in front. You know, it's, what do they say? You know, copying or something is the biggest form of flattery.
Yeah.
AI is going to copy us for a long time.
So do you guys use AI in your studios?
I use it sometimes when I'm putting a presentation together and I want like the overview of the project and like summarizing it into that sort of introductory scope. I say to ChatGPT, okay, imagine you're an interior designer and you're about to present to a client. You just want to cover these things off, and I just dump all my text into it. And it gives me those lovely dot points. That's where it's really useful. Yeah. Even for today, I had all these things I wanted to share, and I went, I'm having. How am I going to do this? Because I've got all this stuff, and I just want some dot points, and bang, there it went. It was incredible. But then there's that fear of, and it does happen, and they're just not the right clients in that. You know, people look online and they'll design their room online with AI, and good luck to them.
They're not our people.
No,
they're not our people.
Daryl, what about you? Do you use AI?
Yeah, I do. I've only just started, so I've started using it for social media. I've tried a couple of things and I've taken them off my Instagram account because they were just terrible. There was one where I used an avatar that had a sort of an Australian voice that was talking about, because I wanted to educate and talk about things, and I used it, and then I found that people hated it. Like, I only did 2, and then I think I used another format was a voiceover, and a lot of people use voiceovers, but I think if people know you, they go, well, whose voice is that? Why is he using that? And so I stopped, and then I just, put my big boy pants on, and I've gone in front of the camera, and I've gone in front of the mic, and they are the best ones. They're the ones that people love. So I use it as my backup. I use it also in like storyboards and mood boards. So I'm trying to pull together. They're great for time. So if I say I have got 45 minutes to put together a Canva file on a VIP wine venue, I'm going to grab some images, and then I need some words to describe. And you just tell it, give me some words to describe a country VIP wine room retreat, and then I edit it, and it saves me hours of time. And
I think that's key, is understanding that it is
a tool.
You've got to know your product and you've got to know your industry to know that if it's saying something about Art Deco and you're going, that's absolute rubbish.
That's rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that's where, like, it's so easy to see content or stuff that's been generated by AI and people have just done copy and paste straight in there. And it's like, no human has actually read that before you've put it out, or it doesn't sound like you. And I think so often, our clients want to connect with us and get to know us, and so much of it is relationship-based kind of thing. And so I think using AI as one of the many tools that we use in our studios day to day, and I do think as solo studio owners, like, I think AI is your absolute best friend, because there's so many things that it can do. Like you said, Sarah, something that might take you an hour to kind of craft the words and all that kind of stuff. If AI can give you the first draft and you've just got to tweak, that's half an hour you've got back in your day. Yeah. Do that a couple of times across the week, and that's, Friday afternoon off. It's great.
And I think too, it's a great tool where as you come out of a study, and we've talked about this before, you just don't know. You don't know so much, and you don't know until you don't know it and it comes up and you have to deal with it. I will ask AI things. I'll go, okay, which things that I know now, but I could imagine a young designer going, what's the correct distance between a sofa and an armchair or a coffee table? How big should a dining table be in a room for people to move around it? What size rug should I use? So you just feed it in and it just gives you a really good overview. So rather than having to ask someone or look for it like I did, it's just there, and it's just saves so much time. And you look more and more professional because you've got all this knowledge that you're building from AI.
Yeah. No, it's very, very cool. Oh, Daryl and Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. I have loved our chat. I could keep talking for hours. So thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you've had fun.
You're welcome.
Thank you
It was
so
fantastic.
much.
Thank you for listening to this design dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how more time to design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next design dialogue.